Good evening. My name's Ralph McMullen, and this is my wife, Nita. And Monty English had asked us to come and share the story of a miracle that occurred in our life. Nita and I had been married about 18 months, and she didn't think she could have children because she'd never had children. We'd both had a marriage previous, and we'd gotten together and came home one day, and sure enough, we were pregnant. And she was so excited, and she'd never had a child, and I was very excited. And she did all that she needed to do, due diligence, took her vitamins, went and got her doctor, and the doctor took really good care of her and did the sonograms, and we were very excited. And one afternoon, we went to her normally scheduled doctor's appointment, and the doctor said that she had some concerns about one of the sonograms and wanted to refer us to a specialist. She said there was no reason to be alarmed, just wanted to make sure that what she was seeing wasn't anything to be too overly concerned about. And so she made an appointment for us and referred us to the specialist. And we went to see the specialist, and he did some tests and called us into the conference room. And he said that he too had some concerns about the pregnancy, and that he would advise strongly that we abort the pregnancy because of the issues that he had seen on the test. This was quite a shock to us. We sat back and we were, just taken back by that. And I remember I looked at Nita and I said, that's not an option for us, doctor. I said, we're Christians, and abortion's just not something we would consider. And he pushed the folder across the table, and he stood up and he said, maybe I haven't made myself clear. If this child goes to term, this is not a child that you will be able to love. This is not a child that you'll be able to communicate with. This is not a child you'll be able to hold. He said, this child will have severe physical and mental handicaps. He said, I would also say that you will regret the day this child was born. And I can't remember a worse feeling at any other time in my life. The devil just started playing in my mind, like, what have you done to bring this upon you and your family? We were so excited. 30 minutes ago, we walked into this office, and our whole world just ended. And I remember driving home to the ranch that night, and Nita and I, neither one could hardly even speak to each other. We just kind of stared out the window and just completely hollowed out. And she decided to call her regular doctor and go see her doctor. And she made an appointment. The following week, she got in to see the doctor. And the doctor basically confirmed what the specialist had told us, that there were some serious concerns with the test, and that she would be happy to run the test again. And after about 10 days, 14 days, they would review it and see if anything had changed. And so we had prayed, and we were hoping that there would be some new news, some better news. But when we went to the appointed time, that the news was the same. She just said she was sorry and that there was no change, and that now we had less than 2 weeks to make a decision, because after that we'd have to carry the baby to term. And that was on Wednesday, and Wednesday night, as our custom, we went home and we went to church, and we'd sit in the back of the church, and we were both completely distracted and unengaged in the service. And right towards the end of the service, the associate pastor and his wife came up and asked what was wrong. And we just played it off and said, no, we're fine, nothing's wrong. We're just dealing with some personal things. And they kept pressing, and they were insistent, and finally we shared with them what was going on. And they began to pray, and they began to pray with fervor and might. It wasn't some mamby-pamby, oh, God's will be done. I mean, they prayed the blessings of heaven down on us, probably for, it seemed like, maybe 30 minutes. And when we left there, we finally had a peace. When we were driving home, I told Nita, and she confirmed, she said the same thing. She said, I think the Lord just gave me a word that it's going to be okay. I don't know what okay is. I don't know what okay looks like. But for the first time since this whole thing started, we were both at peace. And we were scheduled to go back 2 weeks later for another test. And we went back thinking, well, there was going to be a breakthrough. It was going to be good news. And unfortunately, we went back, and the prognosis was the same. The doctor said there's really no change. And so at that point, Nita decided that she just didn't want to go back for any more testing. She said she'd gone, and every time she said, she just didn't want to face that anymore, that it was going to be what it was going to be. And so we just got on with normal life. And about, I guess we were, 22
27 weeks.
27 weeks. And we were both tired and struggling, and Nita loves the arts and loves opera, so I made a appointment and bought some tickets to go to Houston. And it was on a day when one of her regular doctor visits was supposed to be, so we drove into Corpus, and plan was to go to the doctor, get her checkup, and then we were going to head on to Houston for an evening that night. When we got to the doctor, she checked in and went to the back, and it seemed like an hour, maybe an hour and a half passed, and I thought, it's usually 15, 20 minutes, we're done. And so I walked over there to the window and tapped on the glass, and the nurse opened up the window, and about that time, Dr. Shelton, our doctor, appeared and said, "Mr. McMullen, I need to see you. Could you come back here?" And they rushed me back there to an examination room, and she informed me that Nita's blood pressure was spiking, and that they had to take the baby now. If they couldn't regulate her blood pressure within the next 30 minutes, that there was a chance that she would have a stroke and she could die. And I just remember sitting there thinking, what next? And I told the doctor, I said, it's not time yet. This is real early. And she said, we don't have a choice. And at that time, they were getting Nita on a gurney, and we left her office, which was right there at the Spahns Women Hospital there on Saratoga, which was next to the hospital, fortunately, and they took her right in, and within an hour, they were preparing to do an emergency C-section. And I was sitting in the hall, and just beside myself, and one of the nurses, a male nurse, came out and said that Nita had been asking for me, and they gave me some scrubs and said it might be good if you go in, you could be a part of the procedure, hold her hand and just comfort her. And I said, sure. And I walked in there, and there was a lot of people in the operating room, and Dr. Shelton explained to me that they had an emergency neonatal team standing by so that when the baby was born, they could rush it right over to the neonatal clinic across town. And everything happened very fast. And when they took the baby, they immediately put it in the incubator. We didn't get to see it. We didn't get to hold it. We never heard it cry. And they put it in there, and they put it in an ambulance and whisked it away. And it was 3 days later when Nita was able to leave the hospital. I had gone over that night and saw the baby, but it was in the neonatal clinic, and I could really just see the box, and looked in there and left and came and got Nita. And I tried to prepare her when I got her from the hospital to go see the baby across town, what she was going to come be confronted with. I said, it's not a little baby in a bassinet. It's in a big box with portholes and monitors and wires, and you can hardly see the baby. And she was just like, well, let's just go. And when we got over there, we scrubbed in and did everything we needed to do to go in. And as we walked in, we passed all the normal babies in their little incubators, open air, and then we got to the back, and there was this huge box with all these wires and monitors and just television screen everywhere. It looked like something from NASA. And we peered in the little porthole, and our baby was in there. It was just a little less than 2 pounds, and there was a piece of tape and a wire and a pickup and a monitor covering his whole body. You could hardly even see him for all the tape and the gadgets attached to him. And we stood there and we stared, and we just, neither one of us spoke. We were just looking in the hole, and the nurses had come and told us that he's quite a fighter, and that they didn't really know anything yet. It's still a little too early to tell, but the doctor was coming. He wanted to speak with us and just, hang on for a few minutes, and he'd be there. And after maybe 15 or 20 minutes of us standing there, the doctor appeared behind us, and I'll never forget, he put his hands on each of our shoulders. And he said, Mr. and Miss McMullen, he said, that little guy there, he shouldn't even be here. He says, I don't understand it. He says, we were ready for the worst when you delivered, and we rushed him over here. He said, I've run every test that I know and even made a few up. And he says, the best I can tell, other than the fact that he's very small, he's perfect.
Amen.
And
Nita, how is he today?
He's 11 years old, and he's all boy. He's 5'1". He weighs almost as much as I do, and he's a very bright young man.
Amen.
The doctor told us that he would be retarded, that he would never be normal, and today he's in the 5th grade, and he has a 98.7 grade point average, and he reads on a high school level, and some of his SAT scores, he scored past high school level. So that child that should have been retarded was a miracle of God, because he's excelled in everything that he's done.
Amen. Thank y'all for telling the story.